Perception and communication. Is the world quite what you perceive it to be? Your perception of the world is really your and only your reality. You can't see other people's reality. You have to try and experience, and that takes risk. It is much easier to just go through life with only your perception. After all, if you do this, then everything you do or think will be right and won't cause you any psychological discomfort. But is it real? Do you want to see it real? Risk is hard. What if, after experiencing someone else's reality, you had to change your views? What if your family disagrees? What if you have to change things that you're doing with your life? Blue pill? Red pill? Which one would you choose?
Do you want to know what it is?
Perception.
The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us. Even now, in this very room. You can see it when you look out your window or when you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. What truth?
The truth is that only you know about your own perception. So, to delve into this a little bit more, let's understand something. Everything you do costs calories, and in ancient times, calories were much harder to find than in today's world of fast food and easy-to-obtain snacks. Did you know your brain uses up to 20% of the calories you need every day? That little 3-pound organ in your head, 3 pounds, uses 20% of the calories. It's a calorie hog. Thinking is a calorie-expensive task. So, to help conserve calories, something our bodies have been programmed to do with every task, we have developed shortcuts along the way. One of those shortcuts is the use of templates that help us to understand how to operate in the world. It's true, every morning starts a new day, but if we had to figure it out each morning, figure out all the rules and the norms for each interaction, we would never get anything done. So we've developed a system of groups that help us to navigate the uncertainty of the world. Then we trust those people, sometimes for better or worse, and generally we are rewarded with our trust with a good society that works for the majority of people. Note, the majority of people. There are always problems with trust in the norms of society. That is why we must always stay on alert for these injustices and attempt to fix them. One other method we've developed to help us navigate the uncertainty of the world is some general rules that most of us seem to agree with. Some of the rules are taught to us by our parents and other family members from the time we were little. Some are taught by friends. Some we learn in school or from the media. Others we learn by making our own mistakes. These handy rules of thumb can be divided into 3 types, as it were. There are formal rules, informal rules, and hidden rules. Formal rules are the easy ones. They are taught to us from the moment we can begin to understand rules. You learn about formal rules as a baby. Maybe you heard the word no as you tried to stick something in an electrical outlet. If you tried again, you were reminded again of the rule, told no, and redirected. It expanded from there. Many people have formal rules about the temperature of the house. If someone changes it, we don't get too emotional about it, I hope. We just change it back and probably have to sit through a lecture from a parent about the importance or the price of electricity. When you were learning to drive, you were taught the formal rules of the road, such as when to yield at an intersection. When someone doesn't follow the rules of the yielding correctly, there may be some name-calling, but there generally isn't much of a gut-wrenching reaction. Road rage doesn't normally arise from someone not obeying a stop sign. We'll get to that later. When people break formal rules, the remedy is to reteach the rule, and we generally assume ignorance of the rule for the one that broke it. Formal rules are taught out loud, and the reasons for the rules are taught out loud as well. This is important, because other kinds of rules are not so clear. Next, we have our informal rules. These are the rules that are taught to us mostly, and sometimes we will be taught the reason why. The funny part about informal rules is that the reason why the rules exist may change from one person who is explaining it to another. But for whatever the reason, the rule is still in play. In this example with the cars, they're all driving legally in their lanes. However, we mostly don't like to see cars keeping pace with each other in adjacent lanes. Our informal rules monitor will tell our brains to either pull ahead or lag behind. Having someone drive directly beside you on the highway is, well, creepy. It's not illegal, but it does start some kind of emotional reaction because it's breaking an informal rule. Informal rules, when broken, generally start an emotional reaction of sort. Not always the gut-wrenching road rage reaction, but something. Unlike the formal rules, we don't always assume it was ignorance of the rule. We start to think it was stupidity, or maybe intentional bad acting that is causing the problem. We then seek to try and make it all better in some way. At work, if we see someone breaking an informal rule, we will talk to them, or the boss, and expect that the action will change in the near future. It's not generally seen as a firing offense. That's saved for people who break the hidden rules. Hidden rules are the enemy of us all. They are not formally taught, and therefore we don't get a reason as to why they exist. And when they're broken, they start a strong emotional reaction that on the road will lead to road rage incidents, and on the job can cost someone a position. Think about something as innocent as riding in an elevator. You know, there are books for kids about starting school, even about potty training or flying on an airplane, but no books about the rules of riding on an elevator. If I were to tape off an elevator type space in a classroom and ask students to join me in my fake elevator, okay, I've done this experiment so many times, all of the students would follow the rules. I bet if I ask you to take a quiz on the rules of the elevator, you would all pass. Let's try. Where are you allowed to look in the elevator? That's right, at the door, the numbers, or the floor, right? You're not allowed to turn to the person next to you and stare at them. Where are you allowed to stand when people get in? You go to the corners. Are you allowed to talk to strangers other than maybe a sup? No. See, you all passed the How to Ride an Elevator quiz. Now, how did you learn these skills? There wasn't a class on it, but yet you all know the rules. There are great videos out there about people breaking these elevator rules and facing the back of the elevator. Look them up. It's hilarious because they get total strangers to turn around and face the back of the elevator. It's the power of peer pressure. Think about driving. In the picture of the red car, think about having someone with two cars in one lane. It would cause such a deep emotional response. And then just seeing that white car trying to pull into the lane would cause such emotional distress. This is where road rage incidents start. Someone will break a hidden rule and someone else will have an intense emotional reaction to it. Some people even take it a step further and think they're the road sheriff and must correct the bad actor. They'll tell the person off or cut them off, or worse. Another thing to remember is that hidden rules are culturally based. These rules change based on the culture in which one was raised and even your family of origin. You all have hidden rules that in your mind may be obvious to you, and when you start talking about them or acting on them, you find out they're not really rules for other people. For instance, got a question. Should children be spanked? Should children be given candy? What about vaccines? Dating, but at what age? Are grades of C acceptable or not? Is college an absolute or a suggestion? These are all things that are culturally based for your family of origin. There are hidden rules. The problem with hidden rules is that they only come up when your hidden rules clash with someone else's hidden rules. Then there's the issue of teaching hidden rules. How do you teach hidden rules that you don't even know exist? It's worth looking into your belief system and checking to see if you really want to believe all the hidden rules that were given to you, or at least determining if the rules that you run your life by are still effective in getting you to your goals. Now I want to switch over to another area of perception. What makes us notice things? This is an area of perception that makes an entire degree field possible. I'm talking about marketing. I know you like to think that along with the rest of us that we make 100% of all of our own choices all by ourselves. But do we? Do marketers get us to buy things by getting our attention with tricks? Sorry to tell you about this, but the answer is a resounding yes. The world is very complicated, as I've said before. We can't actually take the time to notice all the things even in the grocery store. So how do manufacturers get you to buy their product over other products? They do this by using tricks of perception. We perceive things that stand out as different in some way. We don't even notice things that we believe are the same as before. You know this to be true. Have you ever had a hard time figuring out what was different about someone who stopped wearing makeup or someone who started? Or maybe you couldn't quite figure out what was up, but you knew something was different? Or maybe somebody wore glasses suddenly and then stopped wearing them? It's that way with manufacturers. They have to make you see things that you normally always see. Let's do it here with some examples. So we use motion, such as these little wavy arm guys that big in car lots. How about with tiny gum? Why on earth would you pay extra for just tiny gum? But marketing has proven over and over that we will. Or a giant Rice Krispie treat. Whereas if your aunt ever gave you a box of Rice Krispie treats for some holiday, you would think that was sort of a lame gift. But a giant Rice Krispie treat? Now that's a thoughtful relative. And then we have something where manufacturers use proximity to get you to buy something. As cold weather rolls around, we'll have hot chocolate going on there. But they can't just put hot chocolate on the display. We've got to put a nice thermos there, or some marshmallows, along with some apple cider. And then we've got Boo Berry cereal, nothing but sugar. And parents maybe don't want to buy nothing but sugar for their children. So instead, they've got whole grain and calcium guaranteed, as if this will make you realize that buying sugary cereal for your kids is perfectly fine. And don't forget, everything now is gluten-free, even the Rice Krispie treats, which are made of rice, which of course is gluten-free. So manufacturers do things like this to get you to notice things that you wouldn't, and that is perception. So here are the problems with perception, is that we think we see everything, and that we really notice it all. But now, once you think about it, you know that you can't possibly notice everything. One more example I just have to share with you is to think about a time you were driving and you got to your destination only to realize you didn't really remember driving there. You were thinking about something else. You made it safe and sound, but don't really remember the drive. You were just on automatic pilot, it seemed. Your perception was off. The truth is, we notice just a fraction of reality, but our brains fill in the rest and convince us we really notice it all. Now, why is this? Well, sometimes there are physical differences. One thing we know from research is that men and women see colors differently. Women see shades of colors to a degree that men don't. And tall people may notice things like head bumping hazards that shorter people may not notice, and vice versa. The list could go on and on. In addition to physical differences, there are also psychological differences. These could change with the same person depending on the emotions of the day. When you are experiencing intense emotions, you simply won't notice the things you would if you were calm. In fact, 911 operators are trained to specifically ask questions to get people to notice things important for this rescue. We know from many studies that people who experience a crime of violence simply do not notice things correctly, yet they will believe they do. They testify to things that turn out to not be true, all the while believing them to be true, and innocent people have been sent to prison because of it. Our perception in times of psychological distress is very misleading. Additionally, don't forget about cultural differences. I think this cartoon tells the story well. We often think of our culture as the best culture, and we tend to judge people from other cultures as less than. This is called ethnocentrism, and it leads to terrible things like war and slavery and other things that cause a great deal of pain. It's worth remembering before we judge another person's actions that they are making those actions based on the perceptions of ideal behavior most likely. Now I want to switch gears a bit and talk about something else to do with perception, the self-fulfilling prophecy. This is the concept that we tend to believe things about ourselves that are reflected to us from others. We then act in such a way as to confirm those beliefs and thus prove those beliefs correct. For instance, one famous study took a group of first graders and told their teacher they scored at the top percentage of the performance test. Another group's teacher was told that they scored in the bottom percentile. At the end of the year, the first group actually was scoring higher and the second group was far behind. The actual truth was that neither group of first graders had scored differently at all. They were both just average. It was the teacher's expectations of the students that made all the difference. They expected things of the students, and this changed how the students expected things of themselves. And now, I have a puzzle for you. It's a question we all like to know. Are great athletes born, or are they made? Is it genetics, or is anyone capable with the right training? For this instance, we're going to look at the National Hockey League and birthdays. Western Illinois University Research Department found this was the spread of birthdays for a team of professional hockey players, and it was repeated with other teams with very similar results. Now, put on your scientific hats and try to come up with a hypothesis. Why do you think more professional hockey players are born in January and then in February, March, and April than all the other months combined? Go ahead, think about it. Shall I tell you what other students have thought of? Was it because babies born in cold months are better at cold sports? That doesn't make sense. Was it something to do with being conceived in April through July? Okay, that's just ridiculous. Actually, the answer is simple. See, the cutoff date for registering to play hockey as a kid is January 1. So a kid with a December birthday will have just turned 6 when hockey season starts on January 1, while the kid born in January has been 6 for almost a year. Now, the difference of a year's development when you're in the NHL is nothing, but when you're in elementary school and junior high, a year's worth of physical and mental and emotional maturity is massive. So the January birthday kid will have better skating ability and balance and all those skills one needs. Perhaps the coach puts that kid in as a starter, and that kid starts to think of himself or herself as starter material. And so they practice more than the kid who just turned 6 and can't quite even stand up on the skates yet. Maybe the coach gives the more mature kid extra time on the ice and extra attention in practice and keeps on going like this until, boom, it's suddenly competitive. And now the January kid knows they are better than the December kid, who just kind of fades into the background, unless he works extra hard to make up for that year of physical, mental, and emotional maturity. Strange, isn't it? But the study found that to be the only real answer to the odd birthday spread. But does this matter to you? Are you planning a career in the NHL? I'm not. But how about this? Do you ever plan on being a leader? I hope so. Let's take that study and apply it to leadership. Are leaders born or made? We live in a country that would say leaders are made, that we are all born equal and can aspire to be anything. But some are born with an advantage that others must overcome to match those with the advantage? Let's see if that's true. So I've got another question for you. What's the cutoff date to start kindergarten? You have to be 5 years old on September 1st. So here you go, you sweet little group of kiddos. And there is a massive difference. If you don't have children, you just don't know that there is a massive difference in the kid who just turned 5 at the end of August and the kid who will turn 6 on September 2nd. Yet they're in the same kindergarten class. The younger kid is still very immature, and the older kid can start to control those "I just want to run around" urges. So who do you think the teacher picks as the line leader to help get the whole class to the lunchroom? Yep, it's that kid with a year of maturity on him. Here, it's the little boy in the blue shirt. Do you think he starts to think he has leadership qualities when he's trusted to lead the class? Of course he does. He gets to borrow some of the power from the teacher and take charge of his peers. This is leadership in the making. Not only does he think he's got leadership potential, so do his peers. They obey him when he says "stop" at the door. Meanwhile, the teacher has to hold the hands of those wiggly, just turned 5-year-olds. What happens next? It's not hard to guess. When they come back to class and they're working in their little groups, the line leader now thinks the group should color with the blue crayon and so suggests it. The others, who are used to obeying him in line, do the same thing here because it's easy and maybe they don't really care about what color. Then he starts to think, they listen to me. I guess I'm worth listening to. And so he starts to think of himself as a valued member of the class, as a leader. And he's just in kindergarten. But it continues. Those kids go on to run for student council, and others vote for them. They see themselves as leaders, and so do others. It's almost hard to break out of the roles we put ourselves into. This is the self-fulfilling prophecy. But it's not impossible. These kids may be running on the messages they received accidentally from teachers, parents, or others. And there's no reason to think that these kids can't change their messaging. It's not that difficult. What happens when kids who think they matter, who think others think they matter, get on to high school? They run for class president. They take risks. This is the self-fulfilling prophecy at work. It's also true for those who make good grades. If you think you're a good student, and you study, and you make a good grade, then haven't you just proven to yourself that you're a good student? And you do it again and again until test anxiety is no longer a problem for you. And you'll take harder classes and succeed because you've learned how to study. Sadly, the reverse is true as well. If you believed the lies someone told you that you were bad at math or a bad student, then the only things you really focused on were the times when you failed at something. And then you've put a lot of stock in that so-called evidence of the prophecy. Then you made another prophecy and acted in such a way as to make it come true. You kept doing this until you made it come true. I hope you can see that if you do have any of these negative self-fulfilling prophecies running around in your head, they all started with a lie. Someone lied to you as a little kid. They probably didn't mean to, but they did. And if you didn't know it was a lie when you started believing it, now you do. But the good news is you can change that prophecy with some good old-fashioned hard work. You have to do this because you know what's on the line? A full life that is void of the garbage and lies that people told you as a kid. You can be good at anything you try. Will you make it into the NHL? Probably not at this stage. But you can be one heck of a hobby player. Are you deserving of love? Absolutely. And being loved by good people. The thing is, you can be a natural at anything when you start to understand the concept of the self-fulfilling prophecy. So take a good look at the thing you may believe about yourself today that are not getting you where you want to be. Where did it start? Who lied to you about that part of yourself? Start telling yourself the truth, because just like there's no difference in ability between a 26 and a 27-year-old hockey player, there's no difference in you now that you're an adult. Believe what you need to believe about yourself and start acting that way. It is about your own perception. You are a natural-born, wonderful person, and anybody who tells you differently is a liar. There, I said it. Maybe they didn't mean to lie to you. Maybe they thought they were being kind when they told you that thing that turned out to be not true. But you are a natural-born, wonderful person who just has to realize it and change any negative self-talk. We don't see all that we think we see. Our perception of what we see is what makes our world and ourselves who we really are. And we are wonderful.